Zombie Makers, True Stories of Nature's Undead. Introduction, Are They Real? Chapter 1 of Fungus Among Us. Teaching point today, readers, we're going to orient to the text. We're going to make predictions about what you're going to learn and then read on and confirm or revise our ideas. So let's take a look here. The title, Zombie Makers, True Stories of Nature's Undead. You'll notice that this is the same author of When Lunch Fights Back, Rebecca L. Johnson. So take a moment, you can pause the video to set up your notebook. Read aloud, Zombie Makers Chapter 1. Here is today's date. And of course, you got to make your 4 jots. All right, so we're going to orient to the text, do a preview of the text. We already had a chance to take a look at the cover, but let's take a look at the back side of this book. It says, are there things that can take over the bodies and brains of innocent creatures, turn them into senseless slaves, force them to create new zombies so the zombie makers can spread? Absolutely. And they're closer than you think. So take some moment to maybe grow your thinking. The title says, the blurb describes, zombie makers might be about. Come up with your own idea about what you think this text is going to be teaching you. All right, then let's read the inside cover. Are zombies real? As far as we know, dead people do not come back to life and start walking around looking for trouble. But there are things that can take over the bodies and brains of innocent creatures, turning them into senseless slaves. Meet nature's zombie makers, including a fly-enslaving fungus, a suicide worm, and a cockroach-taming wasp, and their victims. Ooh, so what lens should we use from this text? A fiction lens, the nonfiction lens, or a narrative nonfiction lens? Now, you know this is the same author as When Lunch Fights Back, so I'm kind of wondering, which one do you think we ought to go with? All right, now take a moment now to pause the video and do your preview. What's your prediction about what you're going to learn about from this text? What are some possible subtexts? Some possible subtopics? All right, let's look at the table of contents. Introduction, Are They Real? Chapter 1 of Fungus Among Us. Chapter 2, The Worms Crawl In, The Worms Crawl Out. Chapter 3, Can We Eat the Babysitter? Chapter 4, Going Viral. Chapter 5, Try Me, You'll Like Me. And then an afterword, Zombie Makers, Why and How. And of course, there is some information also included afterwards. So one of the things I want you to notice here is that the headings and subheadings either don't help or they could be misleading, right? They kind of want to grab our interest, so they're kind of making us curious, okay? So what do you think we might learn based on the chapter titles? Are the chapter titles misleading or helpful? Even if you're alone, try and answer the question. Here's some thinking prompts. Based on the chapter titles, we will learn the chapter titles are, and then also, if you want to confirm or revise your prediction based on the table of contents. All right, here we go. Introduction, Are They Real? Zombies. Does simply reading that word send chills up your spine? That's not surprising, really. The whole idea of zombies is pretty creepy. They are dead people who have supposedly come back to life, and their minds are gone. Their bodies are decomposing, and they spend a lot of time shuffling around with their arms outstretched, mumbling and moaning, looking for brains to eat, or innocent people to turn into zombies like themselves. So I'm kind of wondering what this connection between animals and zombies is, and maybe what are some features or characteristics that can make an animal into a zombie. Zombies on the television program Walking Dead. Some of you, if you're fans of that show or any of the spin-off shows, I'm kind of wondering what the connection is. It says they're closer than you think. A person usually becomes zombified after being bitten by a zombie or touching its blood. It's not always clear what passes from zombie to victim to make this happen. Some sort of infection, or maybe a virus, perhaps an alien life form. Once a person is infected, though, there's no hope. The zombie-making things enter the bloodstream or brain, and they take control. They give the orders, and the zombie must obey. So it's a good thing zombies aren't real, right? Let's just say there are no zombies like those in movies or video games. But scientists know this for sure. Dead people do not come back to life and start walking around looking for trouble. But there are things that can take over the bodies and the brains of innocent creatures, turn them into senseless slaves, force them to create new zombies so the zombie makers can spread? Absolutely. Are you hooked? Are you noticing this author's technique? They're making a connection between the TV and movie zombies and these strange animals that might share some of these qualities. And I also think they may be helping us understand something unique about these animals. Just like in When Lunch Fights Back, there was something unique about those animals, something only those animals did. I think there might be something unique. So one of the techniques they're using to make this hook is making a comparison. The other thing, that's our goal, right? To hook the reader. And that's how they're doing it. And also, they might be helping the reader to grasp an abstract idea. That could be another goal that they're working towards by making the comparison. All right, so you're going to be using these text complexity cards as we do the read aloud. And it's going to be your job to stop your teacher when you see some of these cards taking place in the book. Okay, so for example, you might notice some subheadings and you might want to call out, let's stop and talk about subheadings, right? So pay attention as we go. Chapter 1, A Fungus Among Us. Fungus? I thought this was about animals and zombies. Anyone need me to stop for any reason? All right. Zombie trait number 1, stares vacantly ahead, moves slowly and mechanically, behaves oddly. A garbage can tipped over, trash all over the ground. There's part of a hamburger, a gooey candy wrapper, a mushy apple. It's pretty disgusting. But it's a feast for the hungry flies buzzing around. One fly, though, doesn't seem interested in the food. It walks right past, staring straight ahead. That's right, it's walking, not flying as flies usually do. The fly's movements are jerky and slow. It's as if the fly doesn't want to move, but something is forcing it to. So here's some academic vocabulary. Vacantly, that means blurry-eyed, not paying attention to what's going on, right? The vacant-eyed stare. All right, so I'm kind of making a connection between the text and zombie trait number 1. What is the fly doing that must be a zombie trait? Also, is anyone making a connection to When Lunch Fights Back and how they started each of the chapters? They're going to give a little story. All right, let's keep on. That something is a fungus. Scientists called Entomophthomusci, or E. musci for short. E. musci is a parasite. Parasites invade the bodies of other living things, and those living things become the parasite's host. Flies are the host of that E. musci fungus. When the fungus invades, it turns normal flies into zombies. A few days ago, an E. musci spore landed on the fly. A spore is like a miniature seed, no larger than a speck of dust. Tough strands of fungus grew out of the spore. So I'm just noticing this caption here. It says, the life of a housefly tough will never be the same after it encounters fly enslaver fungus E. musci, which they're going to show us the bottom of it. So there's some academic vocabulary words that we're collecting here. Parasites, invade, host, spore, and fungus. All right, now's a good time to pause and do your stop and jot number 2. What are we learning about in this first paragraph? Do your jot in this first paragraph. What did you learn? What's your main idea? A few days ago, an E. musci spore landed on the fly. A spore is like a miniature seed, no larger than a speck of dust. Tough strands of fungus grew out of the spore, and they bored through the fly's skin. The fungus spread through the fly's body, feeding on its organs and tissues. And this weakened the fly. Not enough to kill it, though. Not yet. The fungus then released chemicals into the fly's brain. The chemicals change the fly's behavior, and they turn it into a zombie with no will of its own. A creature that will do whatever the fungus commands. So here you can kind of see a little bit of a zoom up of what the fungus looks like. And it says that it is nicknamed the fly enslaver, and it zombifies houseflies, and it's located in North America and Europe. So this could be something that we encounter. Okay, it's a lot of information here, but I'm kind of thinking that the author might be organizing the info into a familiar text structure. So I'm going to reread this part, and then you're going to do a stop and jot with what the text structure you think it is and how you can show it. A few days ago, an E. musci spore landed on the fly. A spore is like a miniature seed, no larger than a speck of dust. Tough strands of fungus grew out of the spore. They bored through the fly's skin, and the fungus spread through the fly's body, feeding on its organs and tissues. This weakened the fly. Not enough to kill it, though. Not yet. The fungus then released chemicals into the fly's brain. The chemicals changed the fly's behavior. They turn it into a zombie with no will of its own, a creature that will do whatever the fungus commands. Go ahead and pause and do your jot. Why does the E. musci need a zombie fly? The fungus uses the fly as food, and as the fungus digests the fly's insides, it gets the energy to grow, make spores, and reproduce. The fungus also uses the fly to help infect more flies with spores, and so spread the fungus from place to place. The zombie fly keeps walking. It reaches a clump of tall grass near the garbage can. The fly grabs a blade of grass and climbs, step by step. The zombie makes its way to the top. The grass sways in the breeze, and the fly grips tightly with its legs to hang on. It spreads its wings, it raises its belly or abdomen, which is swollen from the growing mass of fungus inside like a statue. The fly holds this rigid, stretched out position. I'm thinking you're kind of building some mood here. I'm feeling some suspense. I'm also noting how the story seems to be shifting in this part, right? So maybe they're moving from to a different text structure here, okay? Be aware of that. That does that. The fungus is now where it needs to be. It's high above a place where other flies are gathered. It doesn't need its zombie anymore, so the fungus destroys what's left of the fly's organs, including its brain. Soon the fly is dead. A few hours later, little stalks of fungus grow out of the dead fly, and they form a furry coating on the corpse. That's like a dead body, especially on the bloated abdomen. Each stalk holds a single spore, and each spore has the potential to infect another fly and grow into another E. musci fungus. When the spores are ripe, they shoot into the air and they slowly drift down. Spores land on everything below the dead fly. They land on the garbage and on the garbage-eating flies. Spores will stick to some of those flies, and a new generation of E. musci fungus will begin to grow. All right, wow, that's a lot of information in this section, so I want to just go ahead and reread this part so we can really understand that, because we're going to be coming up with two main ideas for this part of our story. The fungus is now where it needs to be. It's high above a place where other flies are gathered. It doesn't need its zombie anymore, so the fungus destroys what's left of the fly's organs, including its brain. Soon, the fly is dead. A few hours later, little stalks of fungus grow out of the dead fly, and they form a furry coating on the corpse, especially on the bloated abdomen. Each stalk holds a single spore, and each spore has the potential to infect another fly and grow into another E. musci fungus. When the spores are ripe, they shoot into the air. Then they slowly drift down. Spores land on everything below the dead fly, and they land on the garbage and on the garbage-eating flies. Spores will stick to some of those flies, and a new generation of E. musci fungus will begin to grow. Go ahead and pause it and make your jot. What are two main ideas from this part of the story? All right, just want to make sure you are checking in with your jots. Make sure you have your preview jot, your jot number 2, jot number 3, and jot number 4. Thanks for reading.